The whole notion of stimulating cultural exchange and economic cooperation runs very deep in my family. My father in the late 60s was Minister for Culture, while at the same time Minister for Development Assistance. A unique combination, I'll say, and certainly a novelty of the time, but a very useful one. The topic I've been asked to speak upon is how to create sustainable economic and environmental strategies, and putting it in a Danish perspective in the context of Europe. And I shall try to do my best, but I must say the title of my intervention here today is a tall order, because not at the global, not at the regional level, and not at state level are we anywhere near the ideal of sustainable economic and environmental strategies. We are grappling with the problem from many different angles, but political and economic resistance is very often strong and can be very difficult to overcome, as can be seen by many examples. I enjoyed very much Mr. Hauff's intervention here today. He was, as a member of the Greenland Commission, one of those who broke new ground, and I was really pleased with his optimistic assessment at the end of his speech that the business community was now driving. Part of the business community, I think, is right to say. There are other big parts of the business community which certainly still resist strongly change in what is so important and what came so fine, so great out of his speech, to integrate the notion of sustainability in all of our action. Economic action, environmental action, everywhere. Every day today, see brutal evidence of the difficulties we face in creating, for example, economic sustainability. Look at Greece. The government of Greece, with the assistance of the EU and others, are trying desperately to come to grips with, can be told as, decades of complacency and inefficiency. That's not an easy task, to create on this basis a sustainable Greek economy. We see other evidence of lack of sustainability in the drama concerning Spain, Portugal and Ireland, struggling to overcome the burdens of excessive debt, reducing economic and reacting at the same time, creating at the same time more unemployment. It seems that after a number of fat years in the Western economies, decision members are left behind without any pleasant solutions. Professor Enderlein this morning brilliantly, I think, described the deficiencies in fighting the present crisis at the global, at the regional, and the national level. He's right in insisting that we need to rethink our institutions at the global and regional levels, and strengthening our institutions to fight the type of crisis we are now in. He was also very strong. We need a very strong voice at the global level. He described some possible solutions to that. I'm not sure any of them are easy to introduce, but this is the kind of thinking we need. And we also need, likewise, to strengthen the capacities of the EU, which has been given or strengthened by the Lisbon Treaty, to give Europe a stronger voice. This is very much needed, and we certainly have missed a strong European voice during this crisis. Mr. Enderlin, by the way, very well described that there were two impossible and dangerous scenarios to the Greek crisis. One was a bailout and the other was a bankruptcy. And none of these scenarios certainly are possible. We'll have to find another way, a second or third way, which he didn't very well describe and which is very difficult. But anyway, I think he's correct on this one. When it comes to sustainable environmental situation, the situation is even perhaps less impressive than when we look at the economic side. COP15 in Copenhagen gave no viable results. It demonstrated indeed more than anything else how difficult it is to hammer out meaningful compromise to fight climate change at the global level. The big thing now is not to wait for global solutions. The wise governments will not wait for new decisions. Of course, we will need to work hard to have good results out of the next meeting in Mexico. But at the same time, wise government will go ahead with sustainable development full speed. The green race is on, as it was put by Mr. Hauf, and I think he's absolutely right. Wise governments will, in the years to come, do their very best to promote green growth. And those governments who do that will be those governments who come out at the end of a crisis in the best shape. I would like to cite, when looking at the whole question of environmental sustainability, I'd like to mention Greenland in this respect. Greenland, as you know, is part of Denmark. And right now, Greenland is going through a period of very warm weather. I met a Greenland politician whom I know very well in Copenhagen the other day, and I excused to him, I apologized that we had such Greenlandic weather conditions in Copenhagen. It was freezing cold. And I apologized, and he said, well, no problem. Back home we have 7 degrees plus, and it's raining, and it's terrible. And then he added, I think this change of climate between you and us is a rare example of solidarity between the different parts of the Kingdom of Denmark. He did say this with a smile. But certainly Greenland is one area on the surface of the Earth which will be tremendously affected by climate change. The melting of the glaciers in the Arctic area means that new possibilities for exploration of minerals, oil, gold, what have you, will be possible. And mining companies are eagerly awaiting new opportunities, and I think very willing to take risks if this meltdown of the ice continues. It offers new opportunities for a Greenlandic population to have a sustainable economy, which they do not have now. At the same time, there are great dangers. The great dangers from an environmental point of view. The Arctic ecology is extremely vulnerable, and oil spills and other things could cause tremendous damage to their ecology. And also, at the same time, with new opportunities come new challenges. not least in the area of security, where we could see governments starting competing over the resources of the Arctic and creating new security dangers for everybody. Because some of the big actors are all there. Russia and the United States and Canada are very interested in the area. The Nordic countries are there as well. And our aim must be to create some kind of framework, an agreement or framework to regulate exploitation of minerals in that area. I was asked to put this discussion in a Danish perspective, and I'll try to do so. It's not in any way suggesting that that we have found solutions to the great challenge of sustainability. But maybe at least I could point to some Danish experience that could point to some lessons that can be learned. I'll have to go back many years, go back to the 70s. In the 70s, Denmark was very severely hit by the two oil crises of 73, 74, and later in 79. We were very dependent on energy import, and as oil prices soared, our terms of trade deteriorated, and our current account deteriorated, unemployment went up very importantly, and it was a mess. We had to act. And what happened was that we set out broad field of measures with two main pillars. One, to promote with economic incentives all kinds of energy savings in all fields and all spheres, in industry, in private industry, as well as in agriculture, in public buildings and transportation, in private households, not least encouraging the private households to insulate their homes to a higher level. We subsidized the insulation of private homes, creating at the same time increased energy efficiency and employment. The second pillar was to promote renewables, and we were very early in this area, and not least the windmill industry caught on, and even today it is so that 40 to 50% of windmill capacity installed in the world is of Danish origin. Hopefully this will not last. I think the windmill industry will have many new players, and that's fine. We need that. But we had an early start, and it was very much set in motion by political initiatives. I would like to mention also that these energy and energy conservation policies based themselves on political consensus. It was not a contagious issue. Most of what we have done in this area has been supported, has been enjoying broad political support, being worked out, compromise, and in plans covering 2 or 3 years at a time, and with some remarkable results. For 25 years, I think from 80 to 2005, we increased our GDP by 50% without increasing energy consumption, which is a fine result. Since then, the situation has deteriorated. We are not up to the same standard anymore. We have seen increase in our energy consumption, and there's been less emphasis on energy saving, unfortunately, over the last years. But we do have an example of an economy, and a modern economy, increasing the GDP by 50% without increasing consumption of energy, all kinds of energy included. Over time, this policy became more, as I mentioned, more controversial, and it was changed somewhat in the year 2001 with the new government coming in. But I see encouraging signs that we will return to a coherent and intelligent policy in the area. In one very important respect, I think Denmark is also a telling example. We have been fortunate. We are lucky in one important aspect. We don't have much heavy industry, if any. We did have some shipbuilding. It's long gone. We have no car industry, no truck industries, no factories producing building equipment or agricultural equipment, cultural equipment of much importance. We have no big chemical companies. We have no steel and coal industry. So many of the, what could I say, natural opponents of shifting the industrial base are not present in our economy. We have, so to speak, nothing to protect. I realize that resistance to climate change and advocacy of sustainable development could be much different in countries with a different industrial structure. So I say that not just to underline that we, in this respect, are very fortunate. Now, green growth is on everybody's lips, and I think in my country we still are well equipped for the green race. Many small and medium-sized companies, and Danish companies are small and medium-sized, almost all of them, are very busy improving their position in that race. But we have important work to do. We do not have heavy industry, but we are big players in container transportation, which is extremely energy deficient. These great container tankers, they burn as much fuel as cities of 35 to 40,000 people in Denmark. They're huge energy consumers, and the world needs very, very important work to do in improving efficiency for transportation. And of course also, in the name of sustainability, to consider how can reduce transportation. We have big problems in agriculture. We have to adjust our agriculture to new times and to sustainable growth. We are the world's largest exporter of pork, of pig meat, and that certainly creates some environmental difficulties that we have not at all come close to solve. So we have in our economy our problems that we still have to do more about, just not to paint a too rosy picture. Hand in hand with efforts in the 80s to promote energy conservation and renewables, we had to deal with a chronic deficit on our current account. We had built up some very serious deficits, and we had to bring them down. Energy policies contributed greatly to this because it reduced our needs for imports, but we had to introduce other measures as well. We had to introduce measures against the indexation of wages, for example, and we introduced also what I consider then and still do a very sound policy of pegging the Danish currency, the Danish kroner, first to the D-mark and later to the to the euro, which created a stability for companies in their dispositions, which has proven to be very important. Finally, in 1990, after 27 consecutive years of deficit in our current account, we had a surplus, and we've had that since on our current account. What happened in Denmark, to sum it up, is that we pursued very effective energy conservation measures at a very early stage. We conducted sensible economic policies towards wage increases, thus increasing our own competitiveness. We changed our currency policy, and as a result, Denmark, over these years, over 25 years, moved from being a very weak economy to being one of the strongest in the European Union. It will not remain so without intelligent policies. That's a different story. But I was trying to give a presentation of a Danish perspective within a European context. Now, looking ahead of the present situation and the present worries stemming from the financial crisis and the economic crisis, we, in my country and together with all European countries, we face a new long-term challenge, the aging of our population. I'll not give you any statistics. They can be seen everywhere. There's a lot of documentation for this. And over the next few years, very many Europeans will reach the pension age, will leave the labor market, and there will be many fewer to take their places. This is a common European challenge. Again, we see that this problem seems to be less severe in the northern part of Europe than in the southern part of Europe. Our fertility rates have held up relatively well. Some experts say not least because we have institutions for childcare, which relieves families of some of the burdens of bringing children. I don't know if this is true or not, but at least it is true that in the Nordic countries we do have well-built systems, a well-constructed system for childcare. But for the coming years, we will need to change to face these challenges. We need to do less to inspire or give incentives to early retirement. This is a problem which is acute in my country. We have schemes which are very generous if you retire early from the labor market, which of course is, with the kind of problems we're facing, a very ill thought out policy. So we need to stop giving incentives to early retirement. We need to give better incentives to stay on the labor market. And I'm sure that all of you will realize, and we see examples of it everywhere in Europe, that this is a big political battle. It requires a lot of political leadership, political will, and political compromise to solve these problems. It should not be underestimated how difficult it is for politicians to make this kind of decisions if they want to be re-elected. I'm not running again, so I can safely say this. Aging, when I look at it from this point, is not the problem of the same size as sustainability. I don't think so. Aging is manageable. And the opposite of aging, that we had a much younger, that like they do in Russia and Ukraine, where people die at very early age, is certainly a worse problem than aging. But still, I think it can be handled, but it requires a lot of political courage in time to come, as does our favorite topic here, the whole problem of sustainability. Thank you very much.